Not every cry for help is loud. Some are meant for those who know how to listen. The October air moved gently across the small-town fairgrounds, carrying the scent of popcorn, engine oil, and fallen leaves, the kind of afternoon where everything felt safe simply because nothing had gone wrong yet. And Ethan Cole stood near the demonstration ring with one hand resting lightly on Rex's back, feeling the steady rise and fall of the dog's breath beneath his palm, a rhythm he trusted more than most people. Because Rex had never lied, not once, not even when the world did. And around them families gathered in loose circles, children laughing, parents distracted, the hum of conversation blending into a soft, harmless noise that masked the deeper silence underneath it all, the kind of silence Ethan had learned to recognize years ago in places far from home, places where everything looked calm right before it wasn't, and Rex shifted slightly beside him, not restless, not alert, just aware, his amber eyes scanning the edges of movement the way only a trained K9 could, catching patterns no one else noticed. And Ethan followed his gaze out of instinct more than thought, letting his eyes drift past the bright booths and fluttering flags until something small, almost invisible, pulled his focus tight like a thread being drawn through fabric. A girl, maybe 10 years old, standing just beyond the crowd line, not calling out, not moving toward anyone, just standing there with a stillness that didn't belong to a child, her shoulders slightly tense, her chin lifted. Just enough to meet Rex's eyes across the distance. And for a moment nothing happened, no sound, no signal anyone else would recognize. But then she moved her hand slowly, deliberately, lifting it to her throat and drawing it across in a quiet, controlled motion, once, then letting it fall back to her side, as if nothing had happened at all, and the world kept spinning. Laughter continued. A balloon popped somewhere near the food stand. But Rex froze, completely, his body locking in a way Ethan had only seen a handful of times, the kind of stillness that meant something wasn't just wrong, it was precise, intentional, and waiting. And Ethan felt it immediately, that subtle shift in the air, like pressure building before a storm, and his hand tightened slightly against Rex's harness as the dog's breathing changed, slower now, deeper, his ears angled forward, eyes fixed, not on movement, but on meaning. And Ethan followed that invisible line again, this time seeing more than before, the girl's eyes flicking briefly to her right. Not enough for anyone to notice, but enough for Rex, enough for something ancient and instinctive to rise beneath the surface. And somewhere in the distance, just beyond the ordinary noise of the fair, something unseen shifted into place, as if the world itself had been waiting for someone to finally understand what had just been said without a single word. Rex did not move right away, and that was what unsettled Ethan the most, because a trained dog always responded with clarity, with purpose, but this stillness was different. It was as if Rex was listening to something beneath the surface of the moment, something layered under the noise of the fair, and Ethan lowered himself slightly, his voice calm but firm as he whispered the dog's name, not a command, just a connection. And Rex's ears twitched once in response, yet his gaze never left the girl, and Ethan followed that line again, slower this time, allowing his eyes to adjust not to what was obvious, but to what felt out of place. And that was when he saw it, the gap in the movement, a man standing near the edge of a parked vehicle about 20 feet away, close enough to belong, far enough to be forgotten, his posture relaxed in a way that did not match the tension in the girl's shoulders. And Ethan felt a quiet shift in his chest, something old and familiar, the kind of awareness that came from years of learning how danger did not always announce itself. Sometimes it waited, blending in, becoming part of the background until someone noticed the pattern was wrong, and Rex's breathing slowed even further, his chest rising deep and controlled, a signal Ethan had only seen during high-level detection work, when the dog was processing something complex, something that required certainty before action. And the girl moved again, just slightly, her fingers curling inward this time, her eyes dropping for a fraction of a second before lifting again, not toward Ethan, not toward the crowd, but back to Rex, as if she understood instinctively that he was the only one truly paying attention. And Ethan felt that moment land between them, human and animal, recognition passing silently through the space, and he stood carefully, not wanting to break whatever fragile line had formed, his hand still. resting on Rex's harness, feeling the faint tension building beneath the surface, and around them the fair continued without pause. A child laughed somewhere behind him. A vendor called out for customers. A song played faintly from a speaker, all of it creating a layer of normal that made what Ethan was sensing feel almost impossible. And yet it was there, steady, undeniable. And Rex finally shifted his weight forward by a fraction of an inch. Not a step, just a lean, as if aligning himself with something only he could map, and Ethan exhaled slowly, trusting that instinct more than anything else, because Rex did not guess. Rex knew. And whatever the dog had found was not loud, not visible, but it was real, and somewhere between the girl's silent signal and the man standing too still beside that vehicle, a story was unfolding that no one else had begun to see yet. The distance between them felt longer than 20 feet now, stretched by something invisible, something that turned a simple space into a quiet test of trust, and Ethan took a slow step forward, not toward the man, not yet, but toward understanding, his boots pressing lightly against the dry grass, as if even sound might break whatever fragile signal was still hanging in the air, and Rex matched him without command, moving in perfect silence, his body low but controlled, not aggressive, not alarmed, just certain, and Ethan felt that certainty settle into his own chest, replacing doubt with something steadier, something earned over years of learning when to act and when to wait. And the girl did not move this time. She simply watched, her small frame held tight, as if she had been standing that way for far too long, her eyes no longer searching, just holding on, and Ethan followed her earlier glance again, this time allowing his focus to widen, taking in the edges of the scene, the placement of the vehicle, the way its rear door sat slightly ajar, not enough to draw attention, but enough to matter, and the man beside it shifted his weight just slightly, a natural movement to anyone else, but Rex's ears flicked in immediate response, catching the change like a ripple in still water, and Ethan's breath slowed, his senses narrowing, because this was no longer about guessing. This was about pattern, and patterns did not lie. And then it happened, not sudden, not dramatic, just a quiet moment where everything aligned. Rex stopped completely and pressed his paw once against the ground, a signal Ethan had seen before only in the most serious situations, a silent confirmation. And Ethan's hand tightened gently on the harness as he leaned down just enough to whisper a single word, not a command, just permission, and Rex moved, not fast, not yet, but with purpose, angling slightly to the side, creating space, adjusting position like a piece on a board no one else realized was in play, and Ethan followed, his steps measured, his eyes never leaving the man now, who seemed to sense something shifting as well, his posture straightening just a fraction, his gaze flicking briefly toward the crowd before returning forward, and for a moment, everything held, the fair still humming behind them, the wind brushing lightly across the open field, the scent of dust and sugar lingering in the air, and then the girl moved again, just once, her hand lifting barely an inch, fingers tightening into a small, controlled motion, and Rex responded instantly, his body tensing, ready, as if that single movement had completed something unseen, and Ethan felt it too, that final piece falling into place. The quiet realization that whatever this was, it was not over, it was only beginning, and somewhere just beyond what they could see, something else waited, something that had not yet revealed itself, but was already part of the story they had stepped into. The moment stretched thin, like the air itself was holding its breath, and Ethan felt it in the way his pulse slowed instead of racing, the way every sound around him seemed to drift just out of focus, leaving only the quiet rhythm of Rex beside him and the faint shift of gravel under his boots. And he did not rush, because rushing had cost him before, had blurred the line between instinct and assumption, and this time he would not miss what was right in front of him, and Rex moved another step, precise and angled, placing himself slightly between Ethan and the man, not in defense, but in awareness, his head low, eyes steady, tracking every movement with a calm intensity that felt almost human, and the man noticed now, not fully, not openly, but enough for his shoulders to tighten just a fraction, enough for his hand to drift toward the open edge of the vehicle door as if to close it without drawing attention, and that small motion carried more weight than anything else. because it did not belong to someone at ease, it belonged to someone managing something unseen. And Ethan's gaze followed that hand, then the line of the door, then the shadow just beyond it, where the light from the fair did not quite reach, and something about that shadow felt wrong. Not dark, not empty, just withheld, like a space that held more than it showed. And Rex sensed it too, his ears twitching once, his body tightening just enough for Ethan to feel the change through the harness. A silent signal passed between them, and Ethan slowed even more, his steps measured now, deliberate, creating no sudden movement that might break the fragile balance of the moment. And behind him the fair continued in its soft, unaware rhythm, laughter rising and falling like waves against a shore that did not yet know the tide was turning. And the girl remained where she was, but her posture shifted slightly, her shoulders easing just a fraction as if she felt something changing, something moving closer to understanding, and Ethan caught that too. That quiet release. Because relief, even the smallest amount, did not come without reason, and Rex stopped again, this time lifting his head just enough to take in the air, his nose drawing in a slow breath, processing. Something deeper than sight, something carried in scent and space and silence, and Ethan trusted it completely, because Rex had been trained to detect what others missed, but more than that, he had learned to listen to what could not be taught, the subtle language of moments that did not speak out loud. And the man shifted again, his weight turning slightly toward the vehicle now, his attention no longer fully on the crowd. And Ethan knew then that whatever was hidden was not meant to stay unseen, not anymore. And he felt the past brush against the present, a memory of hesitation, of waiting too long, of choosing caution when action had been needed. And he let that memory pass through him without holding on, because this time was different. This time he had Rex, and Rex had already chosen. And sometimes the clearest path was the one you trusted without needing to explain it. And Ethan took one final step forward, steady, grounded, ready to follow where Rex would lead next, knowing that whatever waited in that shadowed space was no longer just a possibility. It was a truth about to be revealed. The space between action and hesitation dissolved quietly, not with noise but with certainty, and Rex moved forward with a calm authority that did not ask for permission, his body aligned with a purpose that felt older than training, something rooted in instinct and trust. And Ethan followed without a word, his presence steady, grounded, letting the moment unfold without forcing it, because forcing had never revealed truth. Only patience had, and the man by the vehicle shifted again, more noticeably this time, his hand resting against the door as if deciding whether to close it or step away. But that pause, that single second of uncertainty, was enough, and Rex stopped just a few feet short, not lunging, not reacting with chaos, but standing firm, his gaze locked, his posture clear, drawing a line that could not be ignored. And Ethan stepped slightly to the side, placing himself within view, his voice calm, even, carrying just enough weight to be heard without raising alarm. Asking a simple question that sounded ordinary but was anything but, and the man answered, but his words came a fraction too quickly, his tone just slightly off, the kind of detail most would miss, but not Ethan, not now. And behind them the fair continued its gentle rhythm, unaware that something had shifted beneath its surface, that a quiet story was unfolding at its edge. And the girl took a small step forward this time, not enough to draw attention, but enough for Ethan to see, her eyes still fixed on Rex, not fearful, not panicked, but holding on to something fragile, something like hope. And Rex sensed it, his posture softening just a fraction, not losing focus, but acknowledging her presence, as if telling her without words that she had been heard, that she was no longer alone in whatever she had tried to say. And Ethan felt that too, that subtle change in the air, the tension no longer building but shifting, revealing. And he glanced briefly toward the open edge of the vehicle again, noticing now the faint movement of something inside, not clear, not defined, but enough to confirm what Rex had already known, that this moment was not isolated, that it was part of something larger, something hidden just out of sight. And the man followed Ethan's gaze for a split second before looking away, and that was the final piece, the quiet confirmation that everything they had sensed was real. And Ethan took a slow breath, grounding himself in the present, letting the past remain where it belonged, Because this time he had not missed it. This time he had listened, and Rex remained still beside him, unwavering, a silent guardian of a truth that had almost gone unnoticed. And in that stillness, in that narrow space between what was seen and what was understood, the world shifted just enough to reveal that sometimes the smallest signals are the ones that change everything. The air no longer felt neutral. It carried a quiet weight now, like something unseen had stepped fully into the moment, and Ethan could feel it in the way his focus sharpened without effort, in the way every small detail seemed to stand out just a little more clearly, and Rex remained steady at his side, not tense, not reactive, but anchored, his presence creating a calm boundary that held the situation in place. And the man by the vehicle shifted his stance again, this time more deliberately, his body angling as if to place himself between Ethan and the open door, a subtle movement, almost polite in appearance, but it carried intention, and Ethan noticed how his eyes did not stay still, how they flicked briefly toward the interior of the vehicle before returning, as if checking something, confirming something, and that glance said more than any words could have, and Rex caught it. 2. His head tilting just slightly, his breathing deepening again as he processed the change, and Ethan lowered his voice, speaking calmly, asking another simple question, one that did not accuse but invited explanation, and the man responded. But this time there was a hesitation, a pause just long enough to feel unnatural, and in that pause the truth widened, not fully visible, but undeniable. And behind them the fair carried on, children running past with cotton candy, music drifting through the speakers, the normal world continuing as if nothing had changed, and yet everything had. Because in this small pocket of space, something real had surfaced, something that refused to stay hidden any longer, and the girl took another small step, her movement cautious but purposeful, her eyes no longer locked only on Rex, but now shifting briefly toward Ethan, as if she was beginning to trust that someone else could understand. And Ethan met that glance for just a moment, offering nothing more than steady presence, because sometimes that was all a person needed to hold on a little longer, and Rex eased forward half a step, not breaking his stance, but narrowing the space between them and the vehicle, and Ethan followed, his movements measured, giving no sudden signal, only quiet intention, and as they drew closer, the shadow inside the vehicle shifted again, this time just enough for Ethan to catch the outline of something small, something that did not belong to an empty space, and his chest tightened slightly, not with fear, but with recognition, the kind that comes when a pattern finally completes itself, and the man noticed the shift in attention, his posture tightening once more. But he did not move away, not yet, as if he understood that movement now would only reveal more, and the moment held again, balanced between what was known and what was about to be, and Ethan felt the past loosen its grip on him, because this time he had seen it in time. This time he had listened to the quiet signal before it became something louder, and Rex stood unwavering, a silent witness to a truth that had waited just beneath the surface. And in that stillness, Ethan understood that whatever came next would not be a surprise. It would simply be the uncovering of what had been there all along. The moment did not break. It deepened, like a quiet truth finally rising to the surface after being held down for too long. And Ethan could feel it in the way his breath steadied, in the way his thoughts no longer raced but aligned, each detail settling into place with a clarity that left no room for doubt. And Rex stepped forward again, closing the final few feet with a calm confidence that carried more authority than any raised voice ever could. His presence firm but controlled, drawing a clear boundary that the man could not ignore, and Ethan followed just behind, his posture relaxed yet deliberate, his eyes steady, watching not just the man but everything around him, the vehicle, the space, the silence that had grown heavier with each passing second, and the man finally shifted fully, turning his body slightly as if to block the view into the open door, but that movement came too late, because Ethan had already seen enough, not a full picture, not yet, but enough to know that something inside that vehicle did not belong to an ordinary moment, and Rex stopped once more, his head lifting slightly, his gaze fixed on the narrow opening, his breathing slow and measured, as if confirming what he had sensed from the very beginning, and Ethan spoke again, his voice calm, grounded, asking the man to step aside, not as a demand, but as a statement that the moment had already moved beyond choice. And the man hesitated, his eyes flicking once more toward the interior before returning, and in that hesitation the truth became undeniable, not loud, not dramatic, but solid, and behind them the fair continued without pause, unaware that something significant was unfolding just beyond its edge, laughter drifting through the air like a distant echo that no longer reached them. And the girl stood still, her small frame no longer as rigid as before, her shoulders easing just enough to show that something had changed, that the silent message she had sent had finally been received. And Ethan stepped forward one last time, closing the space, his hand resting lightly on Rex's harness, not to control, but to stay connected, and together they shifted just enough to see past the man's position, and the shadow inside the vehicle gave way to shape, not fully clear, but enough to reveal that it was not empty, that something or someone was there, hidden just out of plain sight. And Ethan felt a quiet weight settle in his chest, not fear, not surprise, but recognition, the kind that comes when instinct is proven right. And Rex remained steady, unwavering, his presence anchoring the moment as truth moved from unseen to undeniable. And in that stillness, in that narrow space between what had been hidden and what was now revealed, Ethan understood that this was the moment that mattered, not the noise, not the crowd, but this quiet intersection of trust, instinct, and a signal that had almost gone unnoticed, and now it could not be ignored. The truth did not arrive all at once. It revealed itself in pieces, quiet and undeniable, and Ethan held his position as the final layer of uncertainty slipped away, his eyes adjusting to the dim interior beyond the partially open door, where the outline he had noticed before became clearer, smaller than expected, still and silent, and something in his chest tightened, not from fear, but from the weight of understanding. And Rex stepped slightly to the side, angling his body so that his line of sight remained fixed on the space inside, his ears forward, his breathing steady, as if confirming again and again that what he sensed was real. And Ethan spoke softly, his voice calm, asking the man once more to step back, not with force, but with a quiet authority that left little room for refusal. And this time the hesitation stretched longer, the man's eyes flickering toward the vehicle, toward the crowd, toward the narrow space where escape might have once felt possible. But the moment had already shifted beyond that, and slowly, almost reluctantly, he moved aside just enough, and that small movement opened the view completely. And what had been hidden was no longer concealed, a child's shape within the vehicle, seated low, quiet, not struggling, not calling out, just waiting in a stillness that spoke louder than any cry could have. And the world seemed to pause for a fraction of a second, not in sound, but in awareness, as if something deep within the moment had been acknowledged. And Ethan felt the past rise again, the memory of moments missed, of signs overlooked. But this time it did not take hold, because this time he was here, fully present, fully aware, and Rex remained steady, his presence unwavering, a silent bridge between what had been hidden and what was now seen. And behind them the fair continued to move, unaware that a quiet turning point had just taken place at its edge, laughter and music carrying on as if nothing had changed. Yet everything had, because in this small, unnoticed corner, a silent signal had been heard, understood, and answered. And the girl who had first sent that signal stood a few steps closer now, her posture no longer rigid, her eyes softer, watching as the truth unfolded exactly as she had hoped someone would see it. And Ethan took a slow breath, grounding himself in the moment, not rushing forward, not breaking the calm that had allowed this to surface in the first place. Because sometimes resolution did not come from force, it came from clarity, and in that clarity, the situation shifted from uncertainty to understanding, from hidden to known, and Rex finally relaxed just slightly, his posture easing as if acknowledging that the purpose of his stillness had been fulfilled. And Ethan placed a gentle hand against his side, a quiet gesture of trust and gratitude, because once again, it was not the loudest voice that had made the difference. It was the one that had known how to listen when everything else seemed silent. The moment did not end with noise or urgency. It settled into something quieter, something deeper, like a truth finally finding its place in the open. and Ethan stood there for a second longer than necessary, not because he did not know what to do, but because he understood what had just happened, how close it had come to being missed, how easily it could have slipped past unnoticed if not for a single silent signal and a dog that chose to listen. And Rex remained beside him, calm now, his posture no longer fixed in, alert but still grounded, his presence steady as if nothing extraordinary had taken place, as if this was simply what he was meant to do. And Ethan let his hand rest gently against the dog's side, feeling the warmth beneath his palm, a quiet reminder that trust was not built in moments like this, it was proven by them. And the girl stepped closer, her movements small but certain, her eyes no longer searching for help, but holding onto something softer, something like relief. And when she reached them, she did not speak right away. She simply looked at Rex, her hand lifting slowly before resting against his fur, a gesture so simple it might have gone unnoticed by anyone else. But in that moment it carried everything she had tried to say before, and Rex did not move. He accepted it, standing still, present, as if he understood that this too was part of the exchange, not just finding the truth, but holding space for what came after. And Ethan watched them quietly, something in his chest loosening in a way he had not felt in a long time, not since before the memories that had followed him home, the ones that whispered about moments missed and chances lost. But this was different. This was something found, something answered in time, and the world around them began to return, slowly, the sounds of the fair drifting back into awareness, laughter, music, the distant hum of life continuing forward, untouched by what had just unfolded. And yet for Ethan, everything had shifted, not in a way that could be seen, but in a way that could be felt, a quiet recalibration of trust, of instinct, of the belief that sometimes the smallest details were the ones that mattered most. And he glanced once more at Rex, meeting the dog's steady gaze, and there was no need for words, because whatever had passed between them had already been understood. And as the moment faded into the ordinary rhythm of the day, Ethan realized that not every story needed to be loud to be important. Not every turning point needed an audience, because sometimes the most powerful changes happened in silence, carried by those willing to notice what others overlooked. And somewhere in the quiet space between what was seen and what was felt, a simple truth remained, that the world often whispers before it asks to be heard, and it is only those who choose to listen that ever understand what it is trying to say.